This book is dedicated to the people of Israel to assist them in their monumental task in these closing days of the dominance of evil. Then they that revered and loved the Lord spake often one to another. And the Lord hearkened and heard it, and in his presence a book of remembrance was written for them that revered the Lord, and that thought upon his name. Malachi 3:16, the book of remembrance of Moses, the tablet of Gabriel. Chapter 1, an introduction from Motzah the Lamb to the Book of the Law. In our first session with the Urim for this volume, I didn't have any idea of how to proceed. What we received turned out to be the Lord's introduction to this Book of the Law, an account of how evil was formed, flowing out of the first station of heaven downward toward the prison house, Senesael, and the bottomless pit called Shakath. When the scribes were all settled, I put the Urim in place before my eyes, and I waited a few moments to see what would happen, and I am looking past the Urim out a clear window, but I'm not seeing what is there. Instead, I am seeing an open field, and as I search to get my bearings, I see the Lord approaching toward me, and he does not come as a brilliant presence, but his manner feels like he is my elder and teacher who is entering his classroom. And I see that he is carrying the tablet, which we have been calling the tablet of Jeshurun, in his left hand, and his fingers hold the bottom of the tablet, and it is leaning against his forearm. And I began to wonder what he may expect of me when he paused. And I said, "Lord, this is all up to you." And he shifted the tablet to hold it up to his chest, and he began to speak. And he said, "I come here at this time with profound love for all of you, because at long last my father Anoki said will be blessed and find comfort for his poor heart, and this tablet is the tablet of Gabriel. And it will show forth the establishment of the law, which is the pathway back to Eden and into the arms of Anoki said. And I am well pleased that here today there are those among the scribes who represent both the 22nd and the 23rd high priest communities. And be assured that this day is well marked in heaven, that the time has finally come to undertake the task of restoring a knowledge of the law of Jeshurun to the world." And at this moment I could feel his feelings with him, and it was happily instructive for me, for I could feel his deep approval for those of us who had for so long a time kept ourselves from walking in the way of the people, and in this way made our best effort to not become spotted with the corruptions of the world. And I could also feel his outpouring love for others of us who had come out of the world and were pursuing vital repentance, and the feeling of joy flooded over me because he looked upon all of us as being equal in our purity before him, and his amazing grace being applied in its fullness to every one of us made us all equal in his sight. And his teaching went through my mind where he cited workers all doing a different amount of time working, but they all received the same penny as their pay. This parable is saying that in his gracious forgiveness we all stand equal before him. Isn't he wonderful? And what I felt with him as he stood before us was very comforting. And now, as the 23rd high priest community begins to emerge, we are all gloriously one in him. And the Lord said, "There is no greater love that one can have than to bless my Father." And I knew and could plainly see that in his eyes he saw this entire undertaking of restoring the law to be pointed toward comforting his Father. And it was plain to see that he was engaged before my eyes in bearing the burden that he carries for his Father. And in that moment I had the deepest sense that Anoki said is the Father of all of us. Together with him and our kinship with Motzah the Lamb sank deep into my soul, and it came to pass that the Lord clutched the tablet of Gabriel to his chest, and he loved it. And he said what seemed to be a reference from Isaiah chapter 11 and 31, and he said, "I will stand with this tablet for it to be an ensign for my people Israel, and I will set my hand the second time to recover the remnant of my people, which shall be left from Babylon and from the world. And I will awaken them and gather them from the four quarters of the earth, And at this time the awakening and gathering has already commenced, and I shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the 4 quarters of the earth. And this tablet of Gabriel in my hand is an ensign to the nations. It is even the book of the law, which is the straight and righteous pathway back to Eden. And the princes of Babylon will greatly fear this ensign, which is the banner of the elect, and they shall flee from it into their strongholds, and the princes of Babylon are the rulers of the nations. And this tablet is as a flame of the light of truth, which are the Father's lamps shown on the tablet, there being 4 in number, with 2 being founded upon the edge of eternity. And it will be a voice that will call out to the house of Israel to come home to their Father. Anoki said at long last, and Isaiah saw this day, and sang a song, and he was made glad. And so now I come here this day to add my words as preface to this work, as we begin to bring to light many truths about the long war against the law, and upon the house of Israel. And I am here today to begin my instructions, so you and all my people can come to understand the nature of this hard struggle that has followed down through the ages to encompass the righteous. And by understanding where these evil forces come from and how they function in their intentions, my beloved ones can better withstand the onslaught in these days of coming tribulations, and they can come to know what the law is and how to keep it. And Israel is called by a mighty hand, and they will respond resolutely to come to my aid in my burden for my Father. And a knowledge of Anoki said will cover the earth as the waters cover the sea. And this tablet of the law has shone the light of truth 3 times since the beginning, and it will shine the last time in these days of tribulations, and on into the gathering of my people into Zion. And the 4 lamps show forth the times that the law in its purity has become known among men. And each time that the knowledge of the law has shone forth, it has been to bless the purposes of my Father in creation. And it came to pass that the Lord looked upon me with compassion, and he could sense that what was coming now would be hard for me, and he said, "Will you go with me now?" And I said, "Lord, I will go with you anywhere. I won't go anywhere without you." And the Lord said, "We will begin this journey of the vision in the first station of heaven, where the light of my presence and the love of my soul shine forth to encompass all who enter there. And we go now, so you can be informed, and look well at that which will present itself to you there, and be attentive for the sake of my servant Jacob and the people of the covenant that I have made with our father Gabriel. And do not be overly dismayed at that which you learn here. And remember that in the end the righteous pathway back to Eden will prevail to triumph over the evil that you will see. And it came to pass that the Spirit caught me up, and the Lord and I moved together along a slight upward path, and I could tell we were leaving the temporal world, and the meaning of the term natural world being applied to Eden swept over me, and all things temporal seemed to be alien to this spiritual realm that we were entering. And I began to see a light ahead, as if it was at the end of a tunnel, and it appears that we are approaching to pass through an entryway of some kind, and as we get closer I recognize the oaks of Pethach, and it begins to dawn on me just what is happening. And for just a fleeting moment I wondered if when this was over I would still be sitting before the Urim, or if this was my trip into the first station of heaven. But the awareness of the Lord being so close by my right side caused me to be aware that I was just here to be instructed. And as we moved forward beyond this entryway, there opened up a vast place filled with people encountering the light of love, and human emotion is flowing here with great intensity. And in that moment I was reproved because I had become absorbed in what all this was meaning for me. And I realized the Lord brought me here so I could learn important things that are not about me. And I instantly repented and whispered, "Forgive me, Lord," and I turned my entire attention to observing what was being felt by those around me. And I could tell that many had been here for some duration of time, and to me it seemed like it was pleasant enough for them, and some new ones began to move up from behind us forward into the light. And there were many different responses to the light. And I realized that this is what we came here for me to see and learn, and I became completely lost in thought in my observing the people around me. And I became attentive, and I realized we were moving from west to east, and what was before all those here was like a morning sunrise coming up over the crystal waters of the edge of eternity. And my mind immediately went to the image of the sun on the bottom of the tablet of Gabriel. And we literally had passed between the oaks of Pethach, and I really believe that this portal is deeply embedded into human memory. And that is why so often there are two columns at the entryway of buildings in the temporal world. And the Lord and I are politely moving among the people from west to east and also slightly upwards. And as I viewed the light of love arising over the crystal water, the definition of a sunrise and a sunset was the agency of mankind in our daily life cycles. And for some this was their first sunrise, but for others it was their last sunset. Now remember, all mankind come to enter into the first station of heaven, no matter how righteous or wicked. And we shall see now how all this comes about. And the light is wonderful, and nothing could be more comforting to me or more joyous to my soul. And I see many people coming in and departing either to the left or to the right, to be closer to the light, and the ones turning to the right go toward the south to the next station. And I begin to consider what all this may mean when it is applied to the war on the law and Israel. And as I look into faces, I see for some a clear sense of relief and overwhelming joy to come into the light of love and finally come home to their Creator, and they can rest at last from fear and the conditions of extremity that they were subjected to in the temporal world. And for all who come here there is much surprise, but for some, what is to be found here is what they have expected all along. And these are the ones who are accustomed to being loved, and of long habit of loving others, and they bask in the light, and no human heart has ever felt so much comfort, and they look about and rejoice in what others are experiencing in the light. And all their tears of sorrow are wiped away and replaced with tears of joy, and the rest found for them in the first station of heaven is sweet indeed. And it came to pass that I began to see that those rejoicing in the light that shone like a sunrise in the east were drawn in their souls to the reproval of Anoki said, that called them into an awareness of how much he loves them. And I know that no human soul in this temporal world can comprehend the true depth of that love. And as they are elevated to new heights of heavenly bliss, they choose to turn to the right and be influenced by the feelings of Anoki said in the south, which are to fully come to live their gift of life, and thus they enter into the second station of heaven. And as they go to the right, they cling to the light, and they speak and sing of the light, and they find joy in the company of those who move to the right with them, and they are all one in the light as they leave the first station of heaven, and there is no alienation from any form love may take as they enter into the second station. And many others who come here also are very surprised, and they do not feel companionship with those who are openly joyous, and they feel that they are caught out in the open in the light, and they fear that they are exposed to scrutiny in the light, and they fear that the light can expose hidden things within themselves that had remained covered all during their earthly walk. And they cringe with their expectations that they might be condemned and accused, and shame wells up within them. And some who are afraid of the light can sense that now they will not be able to avoid reproval in their customary way, and they begin to look around to find a way out of the light. And to them the threatening light seems to be everywhere, but they espy some shadows away to the left, and it is the shade of some trees growing on a hillside, and as the hill's shape bends around the shadow of the hill itself seems inviting to them. and they feel repelled by the reproval coming from the east, and would not consider using it to seek a new depth of their gift of life, and they feel more at home with the shadows. So they turn to the left away from the gift of life of Enoch said, and they move toward the shadows, and they move a little downward to the left toward the shadows, and when they turn away from the south, to move toward the north, they cannot hear the voices from the south that emanate with the feelings that call them to live life charitably, and that would have them happily attached to the circumstances of their lives, like a household with a father and a mother tending to their busy children. And they find rest in the shadows, and some few of them, after they are rested, look over to see the light shining on others, and they find the courage to move back into the light, to be vulnerable to the truth about themselves. And in the first station, it is common to move back and forth between the light and the shadows, and for these, when they move back into the light, they spend more time in the light, and their adapting to the love of the light is a very joyous moment for the Lord. And yet again, for some of them, they remain afraid of the light and move deeper and deeper into the shadows of the hill, and they look with dread upon the rays of light reaching over the hills, and there are just too many things inside them that they want to keep hidden from the light, and they cannot hear the trees and the hills urging them to go back toward the light. And all these are now facing to the north and away from the south, and they turn to the left again, causing them to leave the first station of heaven, and now they are turned facing the west, and they have turned away from the east which is behind them, and those who turn to the left away from the shadows the second time to find more darkness are not able to hear the marvellous voices emanating from the east, speaking of the Father's sweet reproval, calling out to them to know how much he loves them, and they cannot hear the voices which are calling out to them to really know how they and Anoki said are doing as a father and a child walking the way together. And thus they are not able to take his hand in the midst of their fears, and those who are determined to safeguard their secrets, who turn to the left the second time, go down a little incline into what is called the prison house, and it is called the prison house because it is so hard to leave it to find one's way back into the shadows, and Kokabel presides over the prison house with his corrupted light, and he is the fourth inscribed after Semih Haah, and Kokabel is the prince of the god of forces, who is their mighty god, and not a god of loving kindness. And Kokabel considers that the darkness there belongs to him, and he lays claim to all who come into his darkness to be drawn to it. And now he has them in his darkness, and he allows all those who live in his realm to have what they see there to be distorted by his strange glowing light, and he rules with fear, and his light prevents any knowledge of the truth of Enoch said, because those there use star-gazing divination, necromancy, and magic that comes from his filthy light. And he is the father of false prophets, and he likes to train soldiers to prey upon their enemies in the darkness of the night. And he chooses for his companions those who are cunning and deceptive in the darkness. And it was his voice that called out to those in the shadows to come hither, and he is the master of secrets. And I wept before the Urim, and said, I am so sorry for you, Lord, and I could know what this evil meant to him, because he was still at my right side. And the Lord pointed for me to look further, and I saw that many here with Kokabel came into the first station, being immediately angry and filled with rage that they had been brought into the light of love, and these turned immediately to the left, and passed the shadows to turn left again to enter into the realm of Kokabel, and they had no second thoughts about being there, and they felt at home in his false light, and their decision, for it was determined and consciously made. And it came to pass that I saw that those who came timidly into the prison house can only escape if they are willing to have their secrets known and are willing to account for them. And the sweet spirit of Enoch said, will come and rescue them and be gentle with them on their way back into the first station, but few there be that find it. And the prison house is a raucous place, and they dispute one with another there, and accusations and harsh words abound there in prideful hearts. And they act hatefully toward those who find themselves there, who want to go back toward the light of love emanating from the east, and hatred finds fertile ground in the prison house. And I saw that those who came into the prison house willingly began to magnify their hatred and disgust about everything, and they want revenge toward those who were their enemies. But they could not find the means for revenge in the prison house. So they turned left again and went further downhill. As those who dwell in the shadows or the prison house find themselves yearning for the light, a profound transformation begins. Even in the darkest moments, the gentle call of Anokiside's love can be felt. The journey back to the light is not easy, but it is filled with hope and redemption. We see those who once feared the light taking tentative steps back towards it, guided by the unwavering love of their Creator. They begin to understand that the light does not seek to condemn or shame them, but to embrace them with boundless love and compassion. In this sacred moment, they find the courage to confront their deepest fears and secrets. The sweet spirit of Anokised gently guides them, offering solace and strength. Each step they take towards the light is a step away from the shadows, and they start to feel the warmth of divine love enveloping them. As they move forward, they encounter others who have made the same journey. Together, they form a community of souls who have found redemption and joy in the light. They sing songs of praise and gratitude, their voices harmonizing in a beautiful symphony of love and unity. The light of Anokised shines brightly, illuminating their path and filling their hearts with an overwhelming sense of peace and fulfillment. They realize that they are never alone, for the love of their Creator is always with them, guiding and protecting them. And so they continue their journey, embracing the light and the love it brings, knowing that they have found their true home in the presence of Anokiside. This new scene, titled The Path of Redemption, adds a hopeful and redemptive element to the narrative, providing a moment of uplift and inspiration before transitioning to the final chapter. Until they came to Senaseol, and Semih Haah presides over Senaseol, and they hated the voices emanating from the north behind them, calling them with strong voices to trust and believe on the Most High, that there could be hope for them and reconciliation without revenge, and for these there could be no turning back, and for these who would not all hope was gone. And Semih Haah is the master over temptations, and he takes delight in base and gross and ignorant sins and selfishness and lust and greed and lying and theft and boasting and cheating are all very delicious to him. And his lying voice calls to those in the prison house who are hesitant to come to him, and he invites them with the prospect of pleasure and dominance over their fellows. And in Senaseol there are boisterous demands and loud shouts to comply, and there is the heat of anger with no clear way to gain relief from it. So it only grows and festers, and the lust for revenge and for the death of the righteous reaches new depths in Senaseol, and they worship death, and they desire to kill all those who they esteem as a thing of no worth. And they begin to search for a way to avenge themselves on the upright, and they find that there is not the means to do so in Senaseol, so they turn left yet again, and they depart downward from Senaseol, utterly rejecting out of hand the forgiveness of Anokised that the voices of the West are saying from behind them. And in the end, all of these will be cast into outer darkness, because they left behind any form of forgiveness. And they enter into a place called Shakath, which is the bottomless pit. And Asael presides over Shakath, and Semih Haah is afraid to go there because his base ignorance cannot compete with the cunning and deceptions practiced there against the righteous and the Most High. And the Lord looked tenderly upon me, because I was weeping at the sight of such evil, and he put his hand upon my shoulder, and he said, Little son, I am allowing you to see and learn of this place, Shakath, into which they are entering, not to bring you sorrow, but so you can learn and be informed concerning this last place the wicked go, because it is from here that the very wicked overcome their differences and join together to construct and implement the war against Israel and the law of Jeshurun. And it is here that they set in place their instruments for gleaning intelligence about the righteous in their plans to overcome them. And because they are intermingled with the Irkodeshi in the midst of creation, they can gather intelligence, so they can come against the righteous, some generations ahead of important righteous individuals being born, and they work closely together. And it is for this reason that during the fifth seal, Michael cast them out from being in the midst of the Irkodeshi, or that is to say, he cast them out of heaven, and they are against all things good, and they fully intend to lay their snares for the righteous generations before they are born. And the primary way they accomplish this is by eavesdropping on the righteous during important prophetic moments, and such moments are commonly ceremonies of passage. For example, when Meerah 8 was born, it was prophesied that she would be the mother of an archangel who would shepherd and rule with the spirits of those who have found eternal life. And with this intelligence, Asael, whose primary hatred is against women, conspired to make Meerah a slave. But I intervened to save her in answer to the prayers of her parents, and she became the mother of Shum. And for this reason, Shum and Shem had hidden names, and you will see that because of the prophecies about Shairi, his family was severely attacked in an effort to prevent the law coming forth to Abraham. And I saw that when they were cast out of heaven, the deception and cunning of the Decadarchi in Shakath reached the limits that evil can go, and the power of their agency began to be expressed in their gaining intelligence through the possessions of the wicked during tribulation times. And upon seeing all this, my spirit wilted. But the Lord said, Be not dismayed, because I have bequeathed the star of Elder upon Jacob, who is my servant Israel. And the star of Elder is the Elder Urim, through which all the Urim of the righteous have looked during all the course of the earth. And all truth brought by Urim is firstly intended to empower Israel from the first Urim to the last. And the star is composed of the two stones of the Urim being brought together. And when separated a little, there is a little vertical line of space between them. How sad it is that the star of Elder is sometimes mocked, and the stones of the Urim of the presence are on 5 of the heavenly tablets to form the star of Elder, and they represent the vast power of the truth, as seen through the eyes of Anoki said that comes to the one who is using the Urim. And the law of Jeshurun is made plain by the truth that emanates from the Urim that Anoki said has given unto those in the holy order throughout the course of the earth, and the light of truth there is strong and cannot be overtaken when the righteous cling to the law of Anoki said. And all the inhabitants of Shakath, who are the Decadarchi and the wicked of mankind of the ages, are of a small stature, the same as hidden stones of the earth. And they are not all encompassing like the mountains, oceans, rivers, and all the Irkodeshi. And all who dwell in Shakath are afraid of the Irkodeshi, and all there are terrified of Jeshurun and the power of the law. And they are angry at Shabuah, which informs Jeshurun. And all this is because Jeshurun is the straight pathway back into the presence of my Father. And it is the way and the only way, and it has been so since ancient times. And the way has been guarded since ancient times by the powerful forces of the alliance of heaven, which includes the righteous of all ages. Now the reason the inhabitants of Shakath hate Shabuah is because it joins together the righteous and the Irkodeshi in the bonds of rich affection. And Shabuah is a holy force that they cannot overcome. And the light which shines forth from the flame of truth is a formidable force that reveals just how unclean and despicable the wicked are, and how alien they are to the creations of Motzah, which are composed of the very being of Anoki said, who is the great holy, most high one, because he is loving kindness. And with these words I gained a confident composure. And the Lord continued, and he said, I have brought you these instructions by way of introduction, so my people can know and come to realize how intensely the forces of evil are against Israel and the law of the holy straight path. And their intensity and cunning with great deceptions will only grow during tribulation times, and unless my people are obedient to all I have brought to them by my Spirit and through Urim, the threats they face will only grow to be more and more effective against them. So here are some essential instructions to follow the 7 foundations of Shabuah that will be a strong help for them. Diligently and selflessly establish and safeguard repentance that maintains the sanctity of marriage by daily harmony in the home, and see that there is no discord in any worship or ceremony of healings. And in all your deliberations, remember to fully engage with the man in element, and follow closely with the 2nd foundation of Shabuah, together with the points of the law that arise with it. And this is so you may avoid the kinds of trauma that my people experienced in the land of Shephelah, and walk in perfection of way in the law to the very best of your ability, always being intent for your love for the law to not become superficial, but with your daily lives fully engaged in repentance that is connected to forgiveness. And in this way, salvation and redemption can flow easily to you. And for the safety of my people in curtailing the evils of Shakath, decisively move away from any friendly relationships with the Decadarchy, which are the possessions of the wicked in tribulation times, and their spirits of that which they teach. And in this way my people may be hidden from the surveillance of those in Shakath, so that they can fulfill their visions of created purpose. And remember, the day of instruction at Shabuah sets in motion forces that will lead to all the designs of evil coming to naught in a moment suddenly, as it did in the days of Noah. And be liberal in your application for the protections of the alliance of heaven, for they stand at the ready to help you to join with the spirits of life in creation with your feelings. And in this way, if you do all these things when I call, you can answer, being led by my Spirit. So now, little son, as the vision unfolds coming from the tablet of Gabriel, my people will receive vital information and instructions in how the war against Israel and the law has proceeded down through the ages. And in this way, the righteous in these days of tribulations will know better how to proceed, and importantly, how to keep the law for the sake of the righteous, finding rich purity for their souls. And in this matter of the law and the end-time mission of my people Israel, many kinds of helps will become known, and a new understanding will abound all over the earth. And I thought to myself, no wonder the princes of Babylon fear the ensign, and are so determined on the destruction of the law, and have so successfully curbed or eliminated it during the course of the earth. And they have thought to kill the law at its roots. And the Lord finished his speaking, and he said, and now when we meet again to come together in the vision, I will bring teachings about the first time the flame of the light of truth in Jeshurun shone upon the earth. Amen. This is the end of chapter 1. Come back next time for chapter 2, which is an account of the original establishment of the law of Jeshurun during the first generation of mankind, and of the origins of the 3 stations of evil. An account of how evil viewed the law of Jeshurun, and of how evil can know to come against people before they are born, and of how Enoch protected the way. Much love and much shalom.